I'm Indra,
And I'm Amanda.
and we'd like to welcome you to The Messy Middle Matters. Hey, Amanda, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Indra?
Good. Today, we're going to talk about one of our favorite things, talking about the invisible work and how the things that people take care of that you don't actually realize in the workplace, and making sure that people can get rewarded for it. So I'm super excited. I'm super excited.
Me too. Making the invisible work visible?
Maybe I like that. Bring it to the forefront. Bring it to the forefront. So Amanda, tell me about, I know that you've lived this over and over again. Tell me an example of like invisible work that you've done that may or may not get rewarded within your organization. That something that's not necessarily part of your job description.
Yeah. What comes to mind is new hire onboarding, but not just here's where you can find all the documents and all the resources, and here's the IT person, and here's how you create a ticket, but more like just making new hires feel welcome, setting up the informal meet and greet, getting to know you as a person, letting them know, my virtual door is always open for questions, for anything, just for moral support as you drink from the fire hose of being a new person at work. And it's something that I've done at, I think, every job. And it's invisible work, especially when the company does not have a formal like onboarding buddy program, right? It's if a company doesn't have that sort of formalized structure and program, it's somebody else's job to make sure that the new hire feels onboarded and welcome and like being brought into the community.
Yeah. And I think that, a lot of, so let's assume a company has an HR team, because you're talking to our listeners, maybe from companies of all different shapes and sizes, right? But let's assuming that there's an HR team. The HR team is really good at taking care of some of the practicalities of making sure that you as an employee get paid and have access to the absolute fundamentals. But there's so much more. There's so much more. And then, the shame of it is that when people take on this kind of invisible work, sometimes called glue work, when somebody takes that on, that doesn't count as far as when you're looking at quarterly reviews or year-end promotion cycles or bonus cycles or whatever, any of those types of things. When the things that a person might be the most proud of might wind up being this invisible glue work. But it's not, they can't elevate themselves because of this great glue work that's really important to the organization, because it actually gels a team.
Right. And not to mention, it takes time and energy.
A ton of time and energy.
Right. And that time and energy can be spent doing other things, but it's this type of thing, using new hire onboarding and making people feel welcome as an example, to your point, is so crucial to team building.
100%. And when you're talking about some teams that have more specific skills, taking them away from, like, if I'm thinking about like an engineering team, you and I have over the course of our careers have had a chance to work more deeply with engineers than some others maybe have. But like, you're thinking about people who are creating code, what they're obsessed about is, making sure the code is checked in, that they've done their story points. There's a bunch of jargon that you don't need to really worry about, just like it's a to-do list. They make sure that their engineering to-do list is done, right? But they don't always think about all the little odds and ends of the stuff that never made it onto to-do list. Like, everyone's like, oh, no, let's not clutter our to-do list with all those little things. We'll know to do it. Well, we know to do it, but we didn't write it down on a list. And that the things that aren't written down on the list are often the ones that are not in that career progression chart that is used for determining who's ready for a promotion, who's qualifies for a larger incentive, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really frustrating. And it can cause, like, you can have an attrition risk. And that's really a big problem. Attrition is when somebody leaves a company, right? And so, and when you lose that person who's being that glue, your team culture can fall apart. It's because the person who's taking out care of all the odds and ends is gone, and nobody even knew half of the things that they were doing. So,
yeah. And that's why I especially like the term glue work, because it is glue. It's the glue holding the team together. It's all of these, it's the person who is picking up all the odds and ends, who's taking the meeting notes, who's, cleaning up outdated documentation. It's all of the things that don't make it onto the formal to-do list.
Right. And the reality, like I said, I don't know if I said this in this conversation or in a previous conversation, if you don't measure it, it doesn't matter, right? That's a very real reality in the business world. If it's not being measured, it's inconsequential. It cannot help you. It might satisfy something within you intrinsically, but it's not going to help you move yourself up that career ladder or move laterally or wherever you want to go in your particular career. So here's the good news, folks. Here's the good news, folks. Amanda and I were there at the Genesis last episode. For those of you who listen, heard a little bit about this. But we were at the genesis of what we're now calling the glue work framework. What it is a tool that you can use as a addition. It can integrate into your career ladder. People managers, don't sweat. I've got you, but we're going to put that later. We need to explain what it is before you start freaking about how I'm going to do it. But we have something that you can really implement in your organization pretty easily. Simple isn't always easy, but it's a pretty simple tool. And what we can do, let's just walk through it. Let's walk through some of the pillars that we have within that framework. So first one is caring about the collective. This is the foundation. This is the foundation. This is Amanda, I acknowledge that you are a human being who works with me. And you might have different wants, needs, desires, things that motivate you, things that you're interested in getting done in different ways of working because of so many different things. And that's step one. That's step one. And I think that that's understanding that and acknowledging that we're not all automatons that are, or that everyone is just like me, is the foundation of this all. And everyone from an intern all the way to your most senior executive is completely capable of doing this.
Yeah. And to add, not just being aware that we're not all robots, we're all people with varying perspectives and experiences, but also being aware that we are part of an ecosystem. It's not just us.
100%. 100%. And I think that I think this is a different topic for a different episode, but sometimes even within organizations, this is much bigger. I'm going to keep myself from going off topic, but I will explain what I'm talking. Different people in different teams, even within an engineering team, since we're using engineering as an example, even within engineering, different teams might have different interests that they're trying to advance, or different departments in the organization might have different interests. In this context, we're talking about individuals, but this can go even a step higher than that. Yeah, 100%. 100%.
But yes, just making sure that you understand there is a collective.
I do. I'm not a man
and caring about it.
Yeah, giving a hoot about it and paying attention to it and seeing oh, Amanda said that differently than I did. Huh. I wonder why. Taking a beat and just being that's curious, with curiosity, not judgment, right?
Yep.
That's the key. That's the key, and because I think you can go from curiosity to judgment, but first be curious. First be curious to understand why. Okay. So that's our foundation. Everyone in an organization should be capable of something of that nature, right? Next step is caring for the collective. That's taking the steps to take care of the people around you, right? That's making sure that the team is stronger and more cohesive. Yeah. Thoughts on the caring for the collective?
Yeah, I think it's the gluiest of the glue work, I think.
It's the messy middle of this one, right?
Yes, it's the messy middle of this. It's doing the things like I described at the beginning of this episode of, just checking in with people and ensuring that everyone feels like they belong and making the effort, taking the action, caring for your community, your teammates, your collective.
Yeah. And the one thing that I want to clarify for anyone listening, Amanda and I know each other well. The one thing that I want to make sure that and so I understand this, and I want to make sure, and some of the words that I said earlier may not make it clear to others, right? That we're not suggesting that work people are your family. That's a whole, the fact that this is your work, okay, we're all colleagues. Like caring, you can still care about people and keep it completely professional. Like I imagine in the military, you can actually still complete your mission. And, I mean, those stakes are a little bit higher. So they do have a little, but anyway, y'all
But
hopefully get my point.
caring for people and about people,
As people, right? And, it is generally this caring for the collective, the expectation is, it's not isolated to this, but the expectation is that this is much more of a mid to more senior roles that often take this on, right? I think that on the more on the everyone side, need to be thoughtful in your communication, right? If a certain particular word will set a particular person off, and there are 50 other alternatives that are perfectly fine, use a different word. Use a different word as long as it's not, something that's causing. Just use a different word. Like those things are so simple. But then there's, when you're at the mid career stage, you can be one of the people when there is one of these pieces of orphan work that we talked about, things that, just no one has been explicitly assigned. Pick that thing up. Don't expect someone else to take that on, right? I think that it needs to be a shared responsibility, something like the orphan work.
Right. The orphaned work, the digital paperwork.
All the things like release notes, right? Like,
Yep.
Or who's typing up meeting notes? Like, what are our takeaways from this meeting? Like, we could have an entire episode on meeting notes.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. And I think that there's also, I'm just checking my notes to make sure, because this is a complex topic here, folks. So, some of the other stuff is making sure that everyone's had a chance to speak and be heard, right? It's yeah, because like sometimes the quietest people on a team have some of the most profound insights because they're sitting back and they're watching.
Yep. The people who just observe what's going on, and because they are paying attention, they're listening to listen and not listening to respond. And
Yes.
I've found that the quietest people in the meeting are often the ones who have the most profound insights.
Yes, 100%. And I'd say that the last thing, which is much more for like the last category of kind of stuff, is more for like the senior team members, which is like every team will wind up in a scenario because we're flawed human beings working with other flawed human beings. Somebody will make a mistake and there'll be tensions, and somebody will say something, and you can feel the tension in the room. The more senior folks who have been trained in this, whose responsibility this is, they can intercept that stuff. They can be like, hey, hold on, deep breath, everyone, time out. time out, or like call an end to a meeting when it's getting off the rails, whatever it is, to make sure that whatever is happening at this moment doesn't cause an irreparable or a long-lasting break within that team and in that structure.
Right. Or like allowing things to fester.
We don't want festering. Amanda and I are good at making sure that we don't let things fester between the two of us. I'm proud of us.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last one is the last pillar. So we had caring about the collective. So I acknowledge that there are people around me. Caring for the collective. I'm making sure that I'm taking care of the people around me, or in the way that's appropriate to my role, right? It's not everyone's to lift in the same way. And then those are both relatively reactive, right? Then there's the proactive one, creating the collective. I think this might be my favorite because it's it allows you to, it's about setting the intention, setting the culture, setting things before things go sideways. Like this is where, Amanda, you're talking about like onboarding, like making sure that everyone has the onboarding materials. Goodness gracious. I mean, and a lot of organizations don't have onboarding materials. So in the absence of that, you have someone like an Amanda sit down with you and say, hey, let me give you all this stuff that I know about.
Right. Let me give you all the stuff that I know about, and let me share the tribal knowledge with you that isn't documented anywhere.
Right. And, this is also like the creating of the collective is also where the implementation of like a tool like the one we're talking about is just one example where you can create a true meritocracy. Like the word meritocracy the meaning of the word meritocracy has been misunderstood over the course of time. It's eroded. But a true meritocracy allows everyone's valued to be counted, and for everyone to and to measure things objectively, right? And so I kind of love that one. I kind of love that one.
Yeah, I love what you said about creating the culture, right? Culture is such a loaded term,
Mm,
but there's culture everywhere. There's company culture, there's team culture, there's the culture of, communication between teams. And this last category, this pillar of creating the collective, is creating that culture and establishing the norms and the rules and creating that space and just setting the stage for what that culture is and what it can become.
100%. I was trying to look up to see if I could remember. You made me think of a quote: "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." I don't remember who first said that, but that is right. Like there's so many different facets, or there's so many different contextual versions of culture. Like, we think of culture as something that comes from a maybe a particular country. But there are cultures and subcultures and subcultures that will naturally develop when human beings get together. So
Yeah.
I think that and there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and we're trying to give everybody a really brief overview of what this is. And so, like, over the course, and we'll give you some resources on how to learn more about this tool, because we are trying to keep our episodes to 30 minutes and completely understandable without a 500 visuals and walking you through stuff and whatever. But the thing that we really, once this group of individuals, of which Amanda and I were a part of, figured out that the things that were this invisible work, this glue work that was being cared for, fell into these three categories. That was step one for us, and figuring out like what behaviors and what types of examples, like examples of work, could fall in each of these. The next step for us was to really talk about how this could get integrated into your career ladder. And the way that we approached it was really pretty straightforward. It was pretty straightforward. We were able to break things up into career phases. So you've got everyone is responsible from your earliest intern career phase. I mean, that's a career phase plus everyone, right? And so these are additive as I'm speaking about them. So the first one is for everyone, starting with your freshest graduate, or from school, intern. Next one is for the people who are in the middle of their career stage, or the middle of the career ladder, right? So there's another category of types of things that are expectations that we would have of them. Then there's stuff for your senior folks, and then for your executives. And so by breaking out, and you heard some of the examples today, by breaking out these tasks and identifying what the expectations are for a particular type of task or item or expectation across these different career stages, you can actually then take these expectations and map them to every single role in your organization, right? And make that work, like I said, not completely measurable. Like you can check off, yes, did you pick up a single piece of glue work? Or I mean, did you pick up a single piece of orphan work this quarter? Yes, no. That's data.
Right. It's data. And, back to what you said earlier about measuring what matters.
Mhm.
Um, you know, adding it to having it be an add-on to the existing career ladder
Right.
makes it a conversation piece during review time.
100. It's not a separate thing, right?
Right.
It's all about the integration. Yeah, it's exactly that. It's the integration into existing tools and processes that's just so critical for it. Because, and then not only does the person who has historically, because of intrinsic reward systems that they have of helping others, right? Not only do they get the value of being measured, because you've distributed this responsibility and made it visible across every single role across the entire organization, your risk as a company is actually reduced as well. Because if you only have one Amanda in your company, and I keep on using your name because you're right in front of me, right? But if you only have one Amanda in your company, and she's the keeper of the culture and all the tribal knowledge and the everything, and Amanda, hits the lottery and decides to go surf in Hawaii for the rest of her life, right? what do you do? It's yes, Amanda might be taking on more of this invisible glue work just naturally because of her role, because of her temperament, because of who she is. But if you distribute some of this across the rest of your organization, you reduce that risk. So like that's like a nice little bonus, and it changes everyone's behavior.
I would love to hit the lottery and move to Hawaii and surf every day, just to be clear. But yeah, it is a risk mitigation strategy.
Yeah. And you're increasing your retention, you are decreasing your risk, and you're surfacing work that's invisible. And I'm thinking, like, as a people leader, the more I can see the invisible work, the more I understand my organization, how it runs. And I might, like, let's be very honest, some of this invisible work might not genuinely be that valuable. It might be something that person X values because they really love knitting and they're running this knitting circle, every Thursday during lunch. That's great. I'm really happy for you. But I can make it really clear to them. I'm like, I understand that you're building culture and that's really wonderful, but that's really not contributing to the bottom line. I can help them redirect that energy if they want to something that does contribute, or say, hey, they're like, I love doing this. I don't care if I get rewarded for it or not. Like, I love my knitting. So great. It brings a lot of things out of the corners and to the surface so you can have a dialogue, help shape someone's career, and help them understand why they are or are not thriving and succeeding in the organization the way that they might want to.
Right. By making this invisible work or this glue work visible, you're creating clarity, you're setting expectations. And I think, it's such a valuable thing to somebody's career to know what the expectations are for what their current role is, what it would take to get to the next level. And, if part of that is doing the glue work, the invisible work, and, keeping the culture alive, and getting rewarded for that.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Cause I'm thinking back to like some of the more frustrating conversations I've had in my past with some of my people leaders. I'm like, Indra, why are you taking on all this stuff? Because I tend to be a picker upper of drop things that have value, right? I don't hoard my thing. Well, I don't generally don't hoard my things, but like I will. I also don't like sharing burdens with people. But I'm like, I would pick them up, and they're like, why are you doing it? Because you're not getting measured on. No one else is doing it. I'm like, but it needs to be done. Like, I agree that it needs to be done, but why are you the one doing it? I'm like, because it needs to be.
It needs to be done. If it's not me, then who?
We're not going to launch without it. But the good news is that, some of my better people managers have had, they're like, okay, I see why you're doing this. Like, let's talk through the stuff that you're doing. Okay. You've got a list of 5 things. Of those 5 things, 3 of them are mission critical. 2 of them you can drop and see who picks them up. And let them, because if you keep on fixing everyone else's problems, they'll never pick it up themselves. I'm like, oh, okay,
they'll never
cool.
learn to pick it up, and they'll never learn how to do the thing that they're picking up.
Right. But like this framework that you can integrate into your existing career ladder will help to facilitate that discussion, like with all of your team members. Make that everyone's responsibility, or at least surface the fact that they're not doing it. If you decide that person X, they never have to worry about any of this stuff, know that and know it intentionally. And the data will remind you of that. Like, I'm letting that person not have to have any of these responsibilities. And I am very clear on the reasons why I do or do not let that person do that. Right. I'm making it super, super clear. So
yeah, we said clear and clarity a lot. And I think that's an episode.
Transparency. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, but like you said, we're breaking the invisible work to be visible. What? So this is a deep, 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 rich conversation. There's a lot of different pieces if you're thinking about doing something like this in your organization. So have a couple of resources that we're going to put into the show notes. So on all the major broadcasters that have the things, and if you can't find it, just go to our webpage and I'm sure you'll be able to find it. But our website, by the way, themessymiddlematters.com, that's in general. For this specifically, the best place to get to learn a little bit more is to go to thegluework.com. It'll direct you to a single page that I have on my website. And what you'll find there is a link to a blog post that goes into this a little bit more structured way. So if you want to share the information with someone, some people are readers, some people are listeners. I've got a Medium post out there for you. And there's also an opportunity to sign up for webinars, or if you're interested in actually having a consultative conversation, that opportunity is there too. So again, about this particular topic, thegluework.com will direct you to a page with all sorts of tidbits of information. And if you're interested in the podcast in general, themessymiddle.com. Or themessymiddlematters.com.
Themessymiddlematters.com.
Because it matters, Amanda. It matters.
Because it does matter. But yes, Indra, to your point, just to echo, if this is helpful to you, go check out the resources. If you think this will be helpful to someone you know, share the resources, share our podcast, share thegluework.com.
100%. And, and if you want to, yes, use that form. Let me know. There's a place to add notes on that form submission. So if you want anything more on this topic, you can add that there. But I don't know. Any other closing thoughts, Amanda, before we sign off for the day?
No, I think this is a good time to wrap up the overview. I'm sure we'll dive into some of this in future episodes. But yeah, I think we're good here.
Yay. Well, thank you all for listening. Thank you, Amanda, for being my partner in crime in all this. And we look forward to you hearing from us the next time when we talk about another part of the Messy Middle. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.